Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
From her rich and fertile valleys to the shores of her icy seas, from her fields and farms and shellfish beds and her many nurseries, for the finest of her flavor, for the freshest by far, choose the things Alaskans bring to the market where you are. Products that we're proud to call our own, and it's all Alaska grown.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It is the 30th of August, almost the end of the month, and it has been a very interesting month for climate all around Alaska. So watch for more information about that tomorrow and as we head into the very first day of September. You can always get the latest forecast information for the next day or the next 7 days at 800-472-0391. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line. Keep that number handy anytime. Weather.gov/Alaska is a great place to go for the entire statewide view, and you can kind of drill down into other parts of the state if you want information about southeast, south central, southwest, the chain, the interior, or the north or western coast. And if you have any questions about what you're looking for and you can't find it and you're still getting used to the new website, we get that, I get that, and I'd be happy to help you find the information that you're looking for. One of the the emails that you can use to get to all of the TV weather team is nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. I'd be happy to help you find the climate information if you're looking for that. And speaking of climate, if you are in the interior, south central, or the west coast, it's been pretty dry the last couple nights, and this morning we noticed something that we hadn't seen a whole lot of so far this season in south central Alaska, and in particular eastern Anchorage. Temperatures dipped into the upper 30s and lower 40s. We had a clear sky. Radiation was escaping. During the day, the sun hits the Earth's crust and the ground across Alaska, and it holds heat, not the air, but the crust, the dirt, the rocks, and the trees, and everything down on the ground starts absorbing that radiation from the sun. Well, at night, we don't get the sun, and that heat literally radiates away. We call that radiation. We have light radiation, we have heat radiation, and of course, this is the bad radiation. That's not what's going on here. This is sunlight radiation being held on the Earth's crust, and as that escapes, again, it cools off in a clear sky. It doesn't happen so much when you have a cloudy sky. In that case, water vapor kind of holds that heat radiation, and it limits how much of that is escaping into the nighttime or clear sky. So if we have clouds, the temperatures kind of stay up a little bit overnight, and you've seen that happen many, many times, and this is why that happens. But with another clear sky expected overnight tonight for much of the Anchorage area and many in south central and even southwestern Alaska, not to mention parts of the interior, it's probably going to cool off again. So don't be surprised if you see those lows in the upper 30s or low 40s or perhaps even colder where you are. That's called radiational cooling when we have that. And again, we're expecting that again tonight over many parts of south central. Here's a look at the visible satellite picture. What do you not see? Clouds across south central, southwest, the west coast, the interior, even the north slope. Some areas there have been relatively clear. Southeast, you've got a few more clouds, and most of the rainfall today was hugging the outer coast. Some of that really just glancing the outer parts of the coastline itself, really not making it too much further into the inner channels. But the weather system that's doing that is pretty ragged, so that's not too much of a surprise. A lot of dry air coming out of the interior, out of the northern Gulf and out of the western Gulf being wrapped into this system and really kind of chewing it up. Here's a look at the infrared satellite picture, and you can look out west and see low pressure working northward toward Adak. That weather system is going to have a very hard time moving any further east, so where does it go? Northward and into the southern Bering, and with that we expect it to fall apart. It's kind of the graveyard for most weather systems out of the Pacific. Up north, we also see plenty of cloud cover reaching into the Beaufort seacoast. Not so much the Chukchi. There's some low stratus and clouds lingering offshore, but a lot of that really hasn't made it in too much further. This is all wrapping around a ridge of high pressure, and you can notice already that we've got a little bit of a northerly hint in that weather pattern. So what do you think that means for the sea ice up across the Arctic Ocean right now? That's currently offshore of Barrow. Yeah, we're going to have to watch that as we get toward the end of the week. Northerly winds could bring that a little bit closer. In the meantime, the weather map looks like this. We have a stationary boundary kind of parked around the Brooks Range across the eastern half, with high pressure sitting over the Canadian province up to the north with about 1,039 millibars there on that high pressure center. Low pressure across the Gulf is trying to push moisture up across southeastern Alaska. In some cases it's been able to do that today, but not in a really efficient manner as best we can tell. Across the interior and southwest, very dry and warm conditions once again. And across the chain, we've got a low pressure system at 1,011 millibars. That's not very much to write home about either, but it has been producing a little bit of rain and drizzle across the chain with plenty of cloud cover out across the Bering Sea. Flash ahead into tomorrow and you see low pressure here falling apart across the eastern Gulf at 1,009 millibars. Dry conditions prevail tonight for south central and southwest and the interior. That means radiational cooling is certainly a possibility as we head through tonight and tomorrow morning. Look up north. We've got areas of light rain and drizzle and probably some fog across the Beaufort seacoast and into the Brooks Range, maybe as far south as Arctic Village. Out across the west, a much better chance for fog and drizzle than anything else. And out across the Bering, the low pressure has made it up toward the chain at 998 millibars, wrapping a better chance of rain across Sand Point, westward toward Dutch Harbor and Nikolsky, all the way out across Shemya, Attu, and probably bringing in more of a southerly flow for Adak and Atka as we get in through tonight. Into Wednesday we go, and low pressure out across the eastern Gulf really isn't doing much, with leftover showers lingering for southeastern Alaska, but it is allowing more clouds to move southward. As this moves out of the way, high pressure is moving southward a little bit more and bringing in cloud cover across the upper Yukon Valley and the Brooks Range, so plan to see more clouds up north. Low pressure across the western Aleutians at 998 millibars is still trying to work that front northward, but it can't do it because we have high pressure blocking that advance across the north. So this system will gradually fall apart Wednesday and into Thursday, but it will still have rain and drizzle and fog across the Bering, stretching right over the Pribilofs, and at times you may run into some thumps and bumps if you're trying to fly through the Alaska Peninsula, maybe across the central Aleutians. And not associated with that weather system, but also just the pressure gradient issue. We're going to watch for some turbulence there across the northeastern Gulf. As we get into Thursday, high pressure sitting across the Chukchi Sea at 1,035 millibars. And here comes those northerly winds. On the east side of high pressure, it will probably start pushing ice back toward the coast. Now, a lot of that is very ragged, and the concentration is not very high, but you may see ice start moving toward the coastline there, so don't be surprised about that. Across southeast, watch for areas of clouds. Not a whole lot of wet weather, it looks like, at this point on Thursday, with the weather pattern moving itself out of the way, and low pressure still has its front intact by Thursday. We'll see. We'll see. It's not a very stout weather system, and more impressive is the high pressure system that's pushing it out of the way. So wouldn't be surprised to see clouds and showers, but as far as an intact frontal boundary, we'll see. Let's just see. As we look at the temperature for today, you'll see 50s and 60s across southeastern Alaska. Many around Sitka saw temperatures in the low 60s today. We saw that around Haines and Skagway in the capital city, down into Gustavus and Craig. And Gustavus is up here. Craig and Klawock and Hyder, 63 degrees. 67 around Yakutat. Beautiful day in Prince William Sound. Probably pretty flat conditions there. Low 70s from Valdez to Cordova. Probably it was a little hot for you in Cordova, wasn't it? 70 in Anchorage, 65 in Homer, 73 around Talkeetna today. Northway checked in at 61. It was 67 by 3 o'clock in Fairbanks, 57 in Fort Yukon. Now look at the north coast, 40s and 50s for many there. Once you get a little bit further inland, of course, temperatures rose into the 50s and 60s. 43 around Barrow, 43 for Wainwright as well, 59 in Kivalina, 65 for Kotzebue. Our friends in Shishmaref, 68 warm degrees. My goodness, that's warm for you. 63 degrees around Nome, 63 in Unalakleet, 65 in Galena, 69 in McGrath. Grayling and many down the river into the upper 60s and low 70s today. Lake Iliamna, lower 70s. 60s around Bristol Bay, including Dillingham and King Salmon. It was 63 in Sandpoint, 63 for Kodiak, 63 in Dutch Harbor and Unalaska, 57 for St. Paul. Just a hair cooler in St. George, mid-50s for Adak and Atka, and 54 way out in Shemya. Now, overnight lows. Look at that. Eagle, upper 20s. Northway, upper 20s. It's going to be cool where you have that clear sky and dry air. 38 in Barrow, 51 in Nome. Fairbanks looking at 32. Southwest, upper 40s to low 50s. 51 in Kodiak, upper 40s and lower 50s for Southeast, and mid 50s for Adak and Atka, as well as the Pribilofs. High temperatures tomorrow back in the 60s and 70s. Never fear, we're not done with summer just yet. Around Nome, 62, 44 in Barrow, 61 in Fort Yukon. That dry air warms up quickly in Eagle. We'll see if it only reaches 59. Might be a little bit warmer for you. Mid 60s to mid 70s as you head south from the Alaska Range into South Central. 72 in Kodiak, and southeast you're looking at temperatures in the lower 60s. So even with clouds, not too shabby. IFR conditions across the north coast, all the way from Kaktovik to Point Hope and Point Lay. As you look at the Pribilofs down through the chain and the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, expect IFR. But for the interior and all of your major mountain passes, it looks to be a VFR kind of Wednesday for you, so enjoy that. Here we go. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass. There you can say this with me. VFR conditions there, and for Lake Clark and Merrill Pass. Why are we even showing these? I don't know, but it's fun. Rainy Pass, VFR. Windy Pass, expected to be VFR. As we get to Isabel Pass, visual flight rule there, and you guessed it, Mentasta, you're a mind reader now, Tanita Pass. VFR conditions expected. One more, Portage Pass, and we get to Southeast Chilkoot and White Pass. Visual flight rule. See, you could be a weather person too. I encourage it. Try the math. It's fun. Out across the west, Norton Sound, 12,000 foot levels and higher. The ridge of high pressure is firmly in control here, blasting the heat across the interior in the southwest. As you just saw with the high temperatures, it's also aloft. Very warm air sitting right across western Alaska. There are hints of some cooler weather though, and we did see some of that wrapping into Eagle with the surface freezing line there, so some places could start below freezing tomorrow, but it will just be a few. Here's a look at the icing potential. Isolated, moderate, that might be a little bit of a stretch. There is some moisture hanging around, but most of that's pretty high level stuff, about 10,000 feet around northern parts of southeast, across the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern chain, and also across the eastern coastal plain of the North Slope. North of Arctic Village and east of Anaktuvik Pass, maybe over Kaktovik, again, above 10,000 feet. Here's a jet stream. Do you really need a whole lot more explanation with what's going on? We have a huge ridge of high pressure sending all this heat across the interior in the north, bringing in those northerly and dry winds across the North Slope later this week and keeping things pretty dry for the interior and south central. Our main weather pattern right now is really focused on low pressure across the North Pacific and its east to westerly flow across the southern Bering Sea. And we do have a trough of low pressure across the eastern Gulf. However, that is bringing in most of the active weather and pushing it south of the Panhandle and focusing more of that wet and unsettled weather across the west coast of the lower 48. So this is a dry pattern for now, as long as the ridge of high pressure is intact across the North Pacific and right around the Bering Strait. Things will continue to be pretty warm. Here's a look at 9,000 feet. Those northerlies are already in place at 9,000 feet, and winds are pretty light coming in from the north 10 to about 20 knots tops. And you can see they're a little bit faster here as they round the southern end of the ridge across Kodiak Island in the Alaska Peninsula and feed into low pressure across the North Pacific. A little bit stronger out across the western end of the chain. Otherwise, northerlies are light coming down the Alcan border out of Prince William Sound and wrapping into low pressure here south of Haida Gwaii. Winds are fairly light for southeast, also at 10 knots. At 3,000 feet, a little bit more of a north and easterly flow coming into the upper Yukon Valley. Winds are slightly stronger, leaving northern parts of the Panhandle. They're about 15 to 20 knots or so, and light winds are coming into the Clarence Strait around 5 knots at 3,000 feet. Out across the west, winds are also slightly stronger from the south and southeast in the south and western Bering over St. Matthew and the Pribilofs, but you'll notice a quick reversal in those winds there as the ridge of high pressure quickly starts to morph into low pressure from Bristol Bay and across the Alaska Peninsula. So pretty much the same story here. The ridge of high pressure up north is firmly in control. As we look at turbulence, don't expect a whole lot of trouble. There will be a few isolated spots that might have a few bumps as you go east of Adak out toward the Nikolsky, below about 4,000 feet there, and that's where that frontal boundary is trying to work through. And out across Icy Cape westward to just about Cordova. Below 5,000 feet, there could be some thumps and bumps as you go throughout your day, but not expecting any major problems with the Alaska Range, the Brooks Range, or the West Coast, or many parts of southeast tomorrow. Looks like a lot of sunshine, clear sky, and not a whole lot of thumps and bumps for your day. So fly safe, and we'll be back with a look at your marine weather forecast and an update on sea ice edge. You don't want to miss that. I'll be back in a few.
NOAA's national marine sanctuaries protect areas of national significance for their exceptional natural beauty and resources. Research and monitoring expeditions provide scientists with valuable knowledge about the biodiversity and ecological integrity of these fragile underwater systems. The knowledge does not come easy. Their mission is challenging and sometimes dangerous, but these risks pale in comparison to the wealth of information that awaits them. This is Expedition Sanctuary Quest. Preparing a research vessel to go to sea is a huge undertaking. Over the course of one day, the empty ship transforms into a high-tech research platform. Tons of equipment, provisions, and supplies have to be loaded and stowed. The crew must double-check every last detail. Once at sea, the ship must be entirely self-sufficient. To keep everything running smoothly, the crew charts a cruise plan to coincide with the schedule of research. The goal of this expedition is to assess the health of offshore and nearshore marine ecosystems. The NOAA ship MacArthur will spend 2 months at sea, focusing on all the national marine sanctuaries along the West Coast, from Southern California to Northern Washington. Research takes place around the clock, and as night closes over the sanctuary, a team of special map makers deploy their side-scan sonar. The sonar will provide acoustic information to make detailed maps of the ocean floor. As one set of scientists are finishing up the night shift, another is being called to start their day. Wake-up calls come early, usually before the sun is up. By dawn, Chief Scientist Sarah Fangman is on the bridge, checking the plans for the deployment of the remotely operated vehicle.
Our weather has turned a little bit, and so we're going to have to move to a more protected area where we can work. Well, as long as we're heading in this direction, because the weather is forcing us that way, we'd like to stop.
Once calmer waters are found, the science continues. The remotely operated vehicle crew prepares their machine for its dive. The ROV allows the scientists to penetrate the unexplored depths, which account for 90% of the ocean. There is no idle time. While the ROV is being prepared, another group of scientists takes seawater and surface plankton samples. As the samples are collected, they go straight to the onboard lab, where they are processed and analyzed.
The ROV can stay down many hours, whereas divers are limited with supplied air, and we can rotate shifts and go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The cameras on the ROV are the scientists' eyes into the ocean. These cameras will confirm what the scientists have found through the side-scan sonar mapping. The ROV also allows scientists the opportunity to do species counts and more detailed habitat classification.
Yes, look at the anemones and the corals, cup corals.
Oh yeah.
That is
excellent.
gorgeous.
Excellent. Habitat's changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Oh,
did you
nice
see it just
one.
caught
Right.
that?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Oh yeah.
A research ship can be a dangerous place with hazards all around. Everyone must be alert to these and know how to deal with emergencies. Fire and evacuation drills are performed without warning at any time of the day or night. As the science work goes on, the ship's crew also works around the clock. Engineers keep the engines operating properly, while the deck officers constantly monitor the ship's location. The deck crew operates all the machinery needed to perform the research, and the galley crew has to be sure all 40 people on board get fed. As night falls again, another shift of scientists begin their work in trawling for plankton.
Half moon out there, so there's quite a bit of light, which will affect how fast and how high these critters come up in the water column.
Okay, watch the slack there, folks.
Okay, got her. Let her go.
One more step in measuring productivity of an area.
Shooting on your faucets, krill, squid, copepods.
After a long, wet night, dawn finally comes. The ship begins a transit to the next area for work. As miles of ocean slide beneath the hull, the observations and data collecting continue. Seabird and marine mammal observers are out working. Bird and whale counts help determine the health of a given area. For 2 months, this grueling schedule of day and night scientific work continues, searching for the understanding that will provide solutions to better manage resources within our national marine sanctuary.
Here's an update on the sea ice edge. Is that pretty amazing or what? There's a lot of warm ocean water out there and a lot of reduction in the sea ice just in the last 2 weeks or so, some huge changes. The white areas, of course, are sea ice concentrations above 80%. So this is really where most of the ice is right now. It's a little bit here across the northern Beaufort Sea. But in the next week or so, things could still be different as long as we have this ridge of high pressure in place that is packing in the heat and sending that so far northward. So for right now, the change I told you about was the northerly winds that could bring some of this a little bit closer to the coast in the coming days. Keep your watch on that there, especially if you're between Point Lay and about Dead Horse. We'll see how those things change as we get into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. In the meantime, the weather not looking too bad in southeastern Alaska. The winds are going to be a little bit higher in the morning, but things should settle down a little bit more for more places, especially across the Lynn Canal and from Cross Sound down to about Sitka and across the southern outer coast. In the meantime, the strongest winds we see tomorrow, anywhere from 10 knots down around Clarence Strait to 30 knots in the northern Lynn Canal with 6-foot seas there. Again, this should improve during the day, and higher gusts should also diminish as we go out across Sound and the northern outer coast as we get into Wednesday afternoon. 20 to 25 up north with 6-foot seas there on Wednesday, and winds get even better as we get into Thursday with more of a north and westerly flow parallel to the outer coast, 10 to 15 there. 3 to 4-foot seas, and also looking for some morning higher gusts. They're anywhere from 15 to about 20 knots. 3 to 4-foot seas expected in the morning, and more of a west to easterly flow coming across Clarence Strait as we get into Thursday. 10 knots with a 2-foot sea. For south central, northerlies over Prince William Sound, small seas and 15-knot winds there. Southeasterlies coming into Resurrection Bay, and it looks like 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Look for northerlies coming down Cook Inlet. Again, really warm ocean water up here as well. 3 to 4-foot seas all the way down toward the western end of the Barren Islands with a southwesterly opposing flow in Shelikof Strait. Westerlies east of the Barrens and from Sitkinak all the way up the eastern coast of Kodiak Island, 15 to 20 knots there for your Wednesday. For Thursday, a little bit of a south and westerly flow working its way up again the western Gulf Coast. Light winds across the northern Gulf and inside of Prince William Sound, and northeasterlies very light across Cook Inlet, 10 knots with a 3-foot sea expected for Thursday, and light and variable winds into Shelikof Strait with a 2-foot sea for Thursday. For Bristol Bay, light easterlies, 10 knots with a 2-foot sea. A little bit of a stronger flow as you head down from Cape Sarachev southward. 30 knots with a 4-foot sea. Otherwise, south and easterly winds from Sandpoint to King Cove and False Pass. 5-foot seas there, but light and variable flow from Castle Cape to Chignik, only 10 knots. That'll pick up to about 20 knots on Thursday with a broader easterly flow. You'll find winds picking up inside of Bristol Bay with a 2-foot sea, and southeasterlies down the Bering Sea coast with a 3-foot sea and 15-knot winds there as we look at Thursday. For the Aleutians, a south and easterly wind coming across the central and eastern chain, 5 to 6-foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, 5 to 9-foot seas across across the Pacific coast on that 20-knot wind. Look for more of a northerly flow as you head out to Kiska to Attu, 20 knots with an 8-foot sea by Wednesday. A little bit more of an easterly push from Adak westward, 15 to 25 knots, 7 to 9-foot seas there. Easterlies, 15 knots with a 3, 4, even 8-foot sea there as you get out toward Adak and Atka. Remember that front's lingering right about here. That's why you're seeing all these changes. 10 to 15 knots with a 6 to 8-foot sea across the Pacific coast as we look at Thursday. For the west coast on Wednesday, northeasterlies coming across St. Lawrence Island, a broad easterly flow working across the southern side of that ridge of high pressure, 15 to 25 knots. Seas anywhere from 3 to as high as about 6 feet west of St. Matthew, and 3 to 5-foot seas from the Kuskokwim Delta through the Pribilofs with a 25-knot wind over the Pribs. As we get into Thursday, more of a northeasterly flow, 15 to 25 knots. The strongest winds will be across the northern Bering, 7 to 9-foot seas there on a 25-knot wind. Easterlies across the Pribilofs continue, but they're around 20 knots with a 5-foot sea there on Thursday. Now for the North Slope, easterlies will be the rule for the Beaufort Sea for Wednesday and Thursday, 15 to 25, 4 to 7-foot seas expected there, and northerlies coming down across the Chukchi coast. 3-foot seas are expected on 15-knot winds for Wednesday. By Thursday, a little bit of a change. We keep the easterlies here for Thursday, and northeasterly winds are coming in across the Chukchi coast, 15 to 20, with 6 to 9-foot seas. Watch for Thursday into Friday for more northerlies to come in across the North Slope there. So again, some changes coming our way for the end of the week. In the meantime, tonight, remember the big phrase that we learned tonight, radiational cooling. Clear, dry sky allows the Earth's radiation that we receive from the sun during the day to pretty much escape into the upper atmosphere as we go through the nighttime hours, and we cool off quickly. That could be the case for the interior, the west coast, southwest, south central, Kodiak Island, all the way out until we find clouds in southeast. And some showers there tomorrow across the North Slope and across parts of the chain with a dying front across the southern Bering and another great couple dry days for Alaska. Enjoy your day. See you tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Support comes from the University of Alaska College Savings Plan, helping you and your child save for college every step of the way, from diapers to diploma. More information at uacollegesavings.com.